puts humanity back 165, 175, 180 million years ago, which science won't exactly agree with. So,
yeah, but science is nothing more than the current state of involvement of the mind. That's all it
right.
is. Now, I find it odd that we have these discussions, and this discussion has happened through the millennia. It's been repeated many times amongst many souls, is that isn't it odd with our species that we can't remember our beginnings? And you would think that as a species,
Yeah.
that we would have the cognitive of mind to understand where we are in history, that we would write a history. It just marvels to me that we cannot recall where we originated from.
That's true. That's true. And no matter what the society is, we have some ideas to what the primitive culture was, but in our case especially, we have remnants of cultures that apparently were far more advanced than we are, and yet we have no memory of them.
Mm-mm.
So, I mean, if that's the case, there may have been a mass extinction that basically sent us all back to single cells, and that could be why.
Well, it's odd that you bring that up, Barb, because I've been really reading a great book, and I'm thinking about actually doing a narration of it on the channel. But think about this. What if somewhere along the line, if the mind is ever existing, because I can't see how the spirit would express itself without the mind.
Yeah, it has to have that.
Yeah. Otherwise, you are nothing.
Well, no, the spirit needs to have a physical form through which to touch into touch into the physical reality.
Well, I would add that I would think that the mind itself, it's one of those great things that we've never defined. What is the mind? And so, what if we've actually somehow degressed in the fact that we have these temporal bodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
That apparently is nothing more, and the best way I can say it, it's an entombment of
Avatar.
an avatar. Good. That requires the mind to be the activator, no matter no matter what happens. Would you say that that would be true?
Yeah, because thought creates action,
Yes.
and I think it was Marcel Vogel that said, we were created by a creator, therefore we create. And in order to create, there has to be the intent, the thought, the instigator for whatever it is that we do.
And so I wrote this before Barbara and I came on because I was just getting ready for this. And I wrote, we create all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that people are actually conscious of that. I have to remind myself during the day that, Wayne, your thoughts are creating whatever it is that you're projecting, either from a subconscious or even from the conscious mind.
Oh, absolutely. And I say all the time, we create our reality by our perception of it. And it's true. I tend to, my glass is half full, not half empty. I am one of those that, I'm constantly looking for the positive, because that means I can get joy from whatever it is that's going on, no matter how miserable it is. And so it's if I look at, I had to have my laundry room jackhammered up because a pipe had to be replaced, and so they had to tear the house apart.
Oh, that's
And
always a pleasant experience.
no, it wasn't. but it was a great experience. They did a great job. I mean, I have a strip of cement instead of tile down there, but it was a great opportunity to move things around, to go through things that had been stacked in the bookcases. It was a wonderful opportunity to move a lot of stuff around, to clean behind things that hadn't been cleaned behind in a long time. It was a good experience. I didn't like writing the check, but aside from that, it was, instead of complaining about dust or noise or whatever, it was like, and the people that came were lovely people, so I had lovely conversations with them. I learned a lot about septic and sewage that I don't ever need to repeat, but it was an interesting learning experience in that way. And I do believe that if you look at a situation with a positive twist to it, and sometimes it's hard to find the positive twist, but if you can find the positive in it, you flow through lessons much more easily. And you have to catch yourself, because lots of times it's like, oh my goodness, this is going to turn out bad, this is not going to be good, and we all fall into that particular what next is going to happen, so much is happening. But if you embrace things as they come, if you look positively at things as they come, no matter what they are, you tend to have a better outcome to whatever situation you're going into.
There's a lot of things that you just said there I'd like to comment on. Is that, all right, most people, and it's always odd how we are trained almost from the cradle, that we process it, things, you have two choices. You can look at it as positive or a negative.
Mhm.
But the tendency is always to resort back to the negative.
Why is that?
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing because, I look at this and I think to myself, maybe it's because what we term as news is always bad news. I mean, you don't lead off with the 6 o'clock news as saying everyone is healthy today. And,
Yeah.
it doesn't, no. It's by nature, it seems like the human consciousness, the collective consciousness, seems to me more jaded to the negative than it does to the positive.
Well, it is. I mean, look at the news at night.
Mm.
They don't lead off with what wonderful things happen to orphans. They have disaster constantly, and that's what sells. So there should be a good news channel, but I suspect nobody would watch it.
Probably not. Probably not. It kind of goes by what I was writing today. I said, mortal bliss is impossible.
It's
Man,
momentarily. You can have it momentarily.
well, man cannot be satisfied. And the reason why man cannot be satisfied is that the core existence of who we are is selfishness. Because when it gets right down to us, each individual is about our existence.
But that is true. But your spirit came into this incarnation in order to be able to experience the physicality in order to grow. So your spirit's main point in this reality, in physical form, is to gather information for it to grow, to evolve, to expand its wisdom. So each lifetime here is selfish, because you're here to learn and to grow. Now,
Oh, that's interesting.
well, why else would you incarnate?
I'm still trying to figure out why I took this ride to begin with. So,
Well, I'll tell you,
I,
when you pass over, you'll know.
well, and that's exactly what I'm preparing for. So,
But and it's not selfish. It's what you came for. It's like if you go to the grocery store for apples and you don't bring apples back, you have to make the trip again.
true, true. Well, I just wish I had the list. That's all. I just,
Well, you do. You just don't have knowledge of it, because if you had knowledge of it, you'd gather it all and you'd move on.
exactly, exactly. That's exactly the point.
But you asked for situations to be presented to you to evolve through them.
Well, when you talked about that we create all the time, I wrote in here and I said, you must believe in order to create. Now, whether you believe the half glass is full or half empty, no matter how you look at that, that belief is going to be channeled into one of two different directions, correct?
Sure.
Yeah. And so my point to that is that what we create manifests most often into our lives that which we most often think about.
Well, sure. And you know what you're afraid of the most, what you talk about the most. I mean, I know people that have to go for medical tests, and already they're planning their funerals, you know, and it's kind of like, but you don't have a diagnosis. You don't know what's wrong with you. Why would you think the worst? And the more you keep thinking the worst, the more you create the environment for the worst to happen.
You see, Barb, that's the thing right there. We are an amazing energy,
Powerful.
powerful.
Yes.
Um, and I wrote down, it's amazing that we're having this conversation because it almost goes to exactly my points here. I said, at the current where we are today with technology, humanity is at a level where there is so much noise that he no longer can see what it is that he has become.
True.
I mean,
True.
I really see that.
And there are people that are blindly going through life not realizing what they're doing and what they're creating for themselves. But a good example of how powerful our minds are, and I'm bringing up Marcel Vogel again because
No, no, I think you should
I
talk a
just,
little bit more about what you discussed prior to coming on, because I think it was very interesting.
well, well, let me do this first.
Okay.
He was an IBM executive who was the forerunner of the investigation of into whether plants could react to our thoughts.
Okay.
And so he was the premier person that initiated that experimentation, and he did it thoroughly. He did it to the point that it was unbelievable. What was fabulous was he was trying to prove the power of the mind, and the power of the mind is instantaneous. So that he would burn a philodendron leaf. He used philodendron for some reason, and then all he had to do was to think about it, and there was a discernible reaction from the plant.
Okay.
And
Yep.
and he thought, well, this is interesting. So he tried like 80 feet away, sending the thought of burning the plant, and the plant reacted. He was able to send that thought 8,000 miles across the Atlantic, and instantaneously the plant reacted.
Okay.
Our minds, the power of our thoughts, are profound,
They
and
are.
we don't give them credit. We don't take into consideration what we're putting out there, what we're seeding our reality with. It's frightening. And you know, you got these spiritual people that'll sit around and say, I'm going to meditate on peace, I'm going to meditate on peace, and they sit for an hour and they meditate on peace, and then they go out and they curse somebody on the road as they're driving home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not taking the peace with them. He did another experiment that I would love to try. He used his own crystals that he had cut for himself, so I don't happen to have one. But he programmed a crystal by holding it and saying, "Stay pure." He focused on it, and the thought that he was putting into the crystal was, "Stay pure." And he put it into a glass into which he poured orange juice, and he poured another glass of orange juice. And a month later, the glass of orange juice with the crystal in it was just as sweet and was just as clear as when he started. The other glass was moldy and murky and disgusting. So it again, it's thought process. It's putting a thought into something and then allowing it to evolve and generate. This is Leo.
Hey, Leah. Hello, kitty, kitty, kitty. Pretty cat. All right. I love this. Go on. This is good. This is I have like a dozen thoughts going, but go ahead.
Well, I just felt that people should understand the power that they have. To feel not empowered is to take away your divinity, because you're not here with no weapons. You have the most powerful weapons in the world. We have thought, we have compassion, we have minds that are amazing, and we can use them, and we can get through whatever comes our way. But there's so much out there that's telling you you don't have any power, that you aren't in control. And when you believe that, you give up the divinity within you. You close the door to the spirit, and you sit here in an avatar, and you wait for the end, because that's all you can do, because you're not going to allow the spirit within to manifest within your reality.
Well, here's what I think the challenge is, and this is just my layman's approach to this. I think there's a great deal of confusion as to spirit. You
Yeah.
have people who come out of religious theology. You don't know if you're a triune being. You don't know what the spirit or the soul is. And then the problem is that it gives no consideration to mind.
Mm-hmm.
So right there, we have confusion from the get-go. You have some people who say, well, I'm a spiritualist. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, all right, so you're a spiritualist of what? I hear the term all the time, well, I'm seeking to be more spiritual. Well, what is spiritual? What is that? Is it connection to the divinity? Is that what spirituality is? I think it's, go ahead.
No, I mean, the spirit to me is that part of the creative source.
This cat is staring me down, folks. Hello, kitty cat. Look at those eyes, folks.
You helping me?
Oh, I love it.
No, the spirit is that fragment, that grain, that piece of
You see,
Come
it's not easy, folks. I'm not even in the chat room, but come on, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go in there. So let me just see what people are saying to what is spirit. All right.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I see a lot of people in here, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, so define what people think, what you think your spirit is. And now go ahead. You go.
Okay, clear of cats.
I love the cats.
There was two of them here for a minute. The spirit is that infinitesimal fragment of the creator that each of us has within us, that gives our 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 bodies, it activates us. It's that piece of energy that has carried us through time, through all of creation, through wherever we're going. It's the same spark of creation that every living thing has, and it's in everything that has life, that has energy. And aliens, I mean, trees, grass, animals,
Mm-hmm.
it's a piece of everything. And that spirit is what goes lifetime to lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. And it takes whatever we've gathered, and it encompasses it, and then it goes on to another lifetime, maybe another planet, maybe another dimension, maybe another wherever. But it is eternal. It is constant. It is constantly growing and expanding and learning and growing. And to be a spiritualist is to connect the consciousness to that aspect within the self, and then to manifest the qualities that that spirit brings into this reality, whether it is through creative expression, whether it is through how you touch into and are in communication with other people. And everybody has their own modality that they're really,
Yep.
really good at.
Yep.
And that's, but creativity is really important, because we were created by a creator. We have to create, and everybody creates differently.
That's a good point.
And so, where I may write or I may speak, other people will garden, will will just know what's wrong with an engine by listening to it. There's all ways, and there are so many different ways of expressing that spiritual self. And then once you discover that modality, whatever is your strength, then it's, using it to tap into and touch into other people's energy, and to kind of link up with them, so that there is communication, so that we are seeking ourselves, that part of ourself that is similar to in other people. We're trying to connect to other people on that level.
Well, I often hear when we talk about discovering that talent, that creativity, it's sometimes like the Hall of Doors. You don't
Yes.
know where to start. Here's what I think that I am learning, and it's taken me many years to come to this realization. Again, we have a difficult time defining what spirit is, and what the
Well,
soul.
yeah.
Yeah. But I think as well, one of the things we're not taught, and I think it's a huge um, crevice in completing the journey, is matter. We don't really understand what matter is. I mean, our bodies are it, matter is all around us. But going back to what you were talking about, spirit is in control of matter. We just don't see it that way.
Well, well, the thing is, spirit is etheric. It has no shape. It has no form. It has no physicality. So that in order for it to manifest, it has to have an avatar like our bodies. And like we were talking about earlier, um, our spirit is the same image as that which created us. But that which created us did not have human form.
You see, that's exactly the point. So have we basically stepped backwards in that process? If we are spirit, and I think that mind is the expression of spirit,
Okay?
and mind also embodies the soul,
Cat here.
as I'm seeing it, because the body, when we're in these bodies, we're trapped. We literally are. We're trapped within the confines of what we have. Um, I was meditating on this today. The body cannot move unless my mind instructs it to.
Right? And it's very much like Thoth. Thoth called the body the um, the prison of the spirit.
Yes. In fact, it's odd that you said that. I wrote today, I said, consider mind is free from exercising its influence on a brain, because this is what death is afterwards, on a brain and indirectly on a physical material body. So our minds have to go through a multi-step process in order to achieve what we're thinking we want to do. I could go, everyone, your nose is itching. You need to scratch it.
Uh-huh.
Now, if you don't scratch it, it's going to really itch more. All right. I got to scratch you see, and that's a step of a process. And I never saw it that way. Um, the mind is a mind force,
Mm-hmm.
which you could say then would be connected to the spirit. And we're talking about creating things here, folks. How you're in your life, where you see happening in your life. And Barbara, I believe that what we can help people to see is how they can begin to change that. I mean, good Lord, if you stay up at 1:30 in the morning, you'll find more self-help gurus that can tell you how to do it
Yes.
in 4 steps. And I haven't quite figured that one out yet.
Well, it depends on your level of consciousness too. And so many people think I've taken this many classes, or I've meditated this long, or I'm this old and I should know all there is to know, and they don't realize that's knowing, having a philosophy, having a piece of paper saying you've achieved a course is not spiritual. It's a philosophy. It's it's worthless unless you are practicing it. If you are practicing it, if you have embraced it, if it is a part of your reality, then you've got it. But how many people do you know that can quote you chapter and verse of the Bible,
Oh,
and
not a
yet
few.
and yet they are not at all spiritual? They are out for
No.
all the money they can gather. They're the snake oil salesman. They can chapter and verse you right up the wazoo.
Hmm.
But when it comes to their lives are avarice. They're obnoxious, and in many cases, they are conditional on who they give their wisdom to. Pay me and I'll talk to you, or I'll give you this, or I'll do that. That's why I kind of back away from even readings, because frankly, whatever I have to share, I'd rather give it away.
Sure. Yeah.
So
How do we
eh,
define wisdom, Barb? It's very odd, when, Proverbs, the first, says, the beginning of wisdom is to seek wisdom.
yes.
And yeah, I always like those things. So you have to think about it. Well, the beginning of wisdom is to seek wisdom. I'm trying to think out what wisdom is, and you're telling me I'm already on the wisdom path. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that if you know that you have a deficiency and you're seeking to fill it, then you know where you're going. Then you know what you're
Yeah.
doing. But if you're looking for someone to teach you and then to give you a certificate saying you've achieved this, then you're in trouble. Because
So
probably,
is wisdom truth, or is truth wisdom?
well, I think sometimes wisdom is both.
Mm.
Wisdom is a knowingness. And if you have a knowingness the minute you think you know it all, then you know nothing.
Yeah, you see, it's it really is a discipline, it really is. It's one that um and I don't know if it's just our nature, but so often I think it's so easy for us just to slip back into neutral, you know,
Oh
and
yeah.
just go with the flow.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've got 2 master's degrees. I've got, you know, college. I've been ordained. I teach all the time, and I would say that most of the wisdom that I have, honestly, I've learned because I felt a need to seek it out and find it for myself.
Yeah.
And it isn't just the finding of it. It's my you can be a prophet or a parrot thing.
Yes.
I mean, you can memorize it and then spit it back at people, and that makes you a parrot. Or you can take the information in, make it your own, and then live it, and then you become the prophet. And it's frankly, I don't have a good enough memory to be a parrot, so I'll go for the prophet part.
Well, actually, I want to read this, folks. This is out of Barb's book right here. Let me see. There we go. Boo-ba-doo-doo. I love this. For those of us in the spiritual fields and seeking enlightenment and wisdom, there are at least two distinct pathways we can take. We can either be a parrot or a prophet. We read, we seek, we take classes, we study philosophy, but it's what we do with it, with all that information, that determines what role we play. There are many who pride themselves in all they have read and are able to quote chapter and verse of many ancient texts and the wisdom of philosophers long since blended into light. These are the parrots, one who just repeat what others have learned and shared. Usually there is no independent thought, just rote memory and the ability to bring forth someone else's wisdoms. Then there are the prophets, those who do all of the above, but instead of quoting ancient wisdoms, they incorporate those wisdoms into their experiences of their current time frame. They blend the new with the old and bring forth an evolved version that speaks to the current time. These prophets build on the foundations laid down by past generations and evolve truth and wisdom, adding their own to greatly enrich and expand into the future. Parrot is easy, while prophets require that you put independent thought and inspiration into your philosophies. So which are you? That's just, you know, when I read that, I just said, wow, that's profound.
And it was short.
Well, you know, sometimes the most revealing epiphanies come in one words.
It's true. And so many people, you know, will buy 12 volumes to get one sentence.
Yeah, yeah. It's the and I know I digress here, folks, but in the movie True Romance, and if you've never seen it, don't go see it. But in the movie, Dennis Hopper's in it, Christopher Walken's, and they got this scene, and Christopher Walken's looks at Dennis and he says, "You're talking a lot, but you're saying nothing." Isn't that true?
Oh, I'll tell you, do you know what the word for that is?
What is that?
Blatherskite.
Blatherskite. Ooh, that is
Great
a
word.
$5 wood right there. See, folks, that was worth the price of your watching this evening. I like that.
It's an English word. It means one who talks incessantly and says nothing.
Oof.
Oh, you're writing it down?
Well, I love words, and you know that is a great word. It
It
really
is.
is. I just think it's phenomenal. So I always like to help say, okay, so we've identified some of these areas. And to finish out the thought where matter is concerned, I think it's one of the most least understood elements around us.
Oh, I agree with you.
So until we understand that matter, in essence, folks, this is how I see it. And Barb, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Matter is a collection of molecules.
Yep.
And what's amazing about these molecules is that they are stationary energy until friction takes place. And friction is attraction.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if we didn't have the cohesion of matter, of molecules, Barb, we wouldn't be here.
That's true.
So that helps me. And it's always that thing that I think everyone saw in the movie The Matrix. Can you bend the spoon? Remember that scene?
Yes.
Yes. The trick is not to bend the spoon, but to become the spoon. It's what you were saying, right?
Yep.
Okay. So that's how I see that if we can understand what our spirit is, and I still think about it. I still think about what the journey is going to be once I lay down this body. I have a feeling it's going to be phenomenal.
An adventure.
I mean, I really do. I don't know. I can't testify to that because, Barb, I haven't talked to anyone on the other side. Um, but that's what I got a sense inside of me.
Well, I talk to those that are still in the green room.
Explain that. Explain that.
And this is my definition. I'm not
Sure.
sure that this is what actually happens, but in my experience as a medium, when we cross over, we basically are in the spiritualists call it Summerland, and it's a place where you really you're there to dissipate. You're there to let go of the humanity, the physical dregs. The you know, when you pass over, you take some of that stuff with you, and so it takes a while for your spirit to sort of clear it all, and for you to become pure spirit again. So I am usually able to tap into people right after they pass over to see what they're doing, where they are, what's going on with them. And I call it the green room because it is from there that they move on to higher realms, and either that or other dimensions, or they reincarnate, or whatever, that they go through spiritual 101, and then it's not spiritual 101, but I call it that. And then they begin to go to school to incorporate everything they've brought from this lifetime into that which they are, and determine what it is they need next to do. Because you know, we're always evolving, we're always growing. It doesn't mean a spirit is incomplete. It means that there are areas that it wants to expand upon, and so then it determines whether to come back here whether to go to another planet, whether to take another form, whether to spend time over there and just, work on what it's gathered. So that the green room to me is the summer land where people kind of get used to being a spirit, understand what they can and can't do. People are usually very, intent on checking in on relatives, how are they doing, and things like that, because they still have that connection to the physicality. So they want to make sure that those that are a part of them are doing fine. Oftentimes there are amazing parties, and they feel guilty when they realize that people down here are very sad and missing them, and they're having such a good time. But usually I can give somebody comfort in that what's happening to their spirit on the other side, because they still have a sense of the form of what they were down here. So that my best friend's father, she said, "What's Daddy doing? I know he's doing something stupid." I said, "Well, no, he's sitting in a Barco lounger. He has his socks on. He's in his undershirt. He has a basset hound on his lap, and he's drinking Jim Beam." And she said, "That's Daddy."
Wow. Now,
And that was like the day after he died.
right, right. I could see that. I have read recently, Barb, that it's very interesting we're having this conversation, that until you can learn to let go of the threads to this reality, that's loved ones, those are the cherished memories, that it's really is a letting go of that, that until you do that, you're never going to be able to be free to continue on.
Exactly. And it's not in my experience as a medium. And this comes from the way I perceive things, so that another medium may well have angels all over the place. There are no harps and halos where I see these people. Um, but I mean, I have favorites. One lady, the as soon as she got to the other side, and she'd been, there were family members there, parent. She wanted to see Jesus. She wanted to talk to Jesus. She had some complaints, and I mean,
Oh, I'm
it's
sorry,
so
folks. That's just
human. It's wonderful. And another woman got to the other side and turned around and looked at her mother, and she said, "Cousin George there should be in hell. Don't they know that?" And they tried to tell her there was no hell. And
I'm sorry.
speaking,
That's just funny. I mean, that the emotions still carry over. I mean,
oh, absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
that woman was sure that George was going to go to hell, and if she was in the same place as he is, somebody had made a mistake.
Okay, folks. I love this. Okay, go on. Now, this is great.
Oh no,
So,
I mean, they're amazing. I mean, the stories are hysterical because I catch them right as they cross over. Can I see them, months afterwards? Sure, but there's more of a placid sense to them. They're more mellow, but the initial stuff is hysterical. I did a spirit circle in Newport News once, and there were two sisters there, and I said, I hate to say this, but there's a man here who's just cursing up a stream, and he's right between you two, and I don't understand it, because usually a spirit will stand in front of the person they're identifying with. And I said, "Do you guys know somebody that had a very flavorful speech?"
expressive way,
Because
flamboyant.
I'm not saying what he's saying, but it's salty. And they looked at each other and they said together, "That's Daddy. He just passed away." And I said, "He is so angry with you." And
Wow.
they said, "Why?" And I said, "You gave his best suit away. You didn't bury him in it." And they said, "Well, it was a good suit. We didn't want to, spoil it. We gave it away." And I said, "Well, you've been looking for his safety deposit key, right?" And they said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, you buried him with it." They had to exhume the body,
Oh.
and it was in the
Oh.
pocket.
All right, folks. So that tells you that the whole concept of the pitchforks and the molten lava that you're going to be thrown into, that this is not. Now, I find it interesting that you can cuss. I mean, what you are over here is what you are over there, right?
Oh, I had an Italian lady who in spirit, who was talking to her daughter and talking about another relative. And I said, she's so sweet. She's a sweet little lady. And she's talking about this other woman who was, and they identified the woman and said, oh, yeah, we know you're talking to. I said, she has a sweet little nickname for her. And this is why I will never repeat a foreign language when I hear it. And I said, she's saying that she's a Putan Diablo. That's her pet name. Whore of the
Oh,
devil.
I was
Whore
going to
of the
say that's
devil.
what I thought that said.
That's what it meant. And they
Yeah,
said, she's right. And but I want to go back to hell for a second because
please do. Please
um, do you know they have discovered hell?
physically.
Yep.
It was my ex-wife. No, I'm sorry.
No, no, no.
No, no, no.
Outside the gates of the city, they were doing it where outside the gates of the city where Jesus was crucified, um, was a sign, and it said, it was, how Hollywood this way, Boston this way, pointing
Mm-hmm.
signs. It was one of those kind of signs, and it had Gehenna on it,
Mm-hmm.
and Gehenna means the dump,
Right, right.
and that's where they threw the bodies that they couldn't bury because they were burned,
Okay.
and so the
Yep.
dump was full of the
Yep.
garbage, full of the trash. They were digging down, and they literally got down far enough so that they found that there were still embers there that went back centuries, and it was still smoldering. And Gehenna is hell.
Yeah.
So hell was, you were going to be thrown into the dump, not into the bowels of the earth.
Right. So let me ask you on the people on the other side. So what is it? I mean, I often had it, we all remember the movie Ghost, right?
Mhm.
Best, I think, modern day love
Yeah,
story.
I like
I
that.
mean, I just,
Yeah, it was a good one.
come on, folks. You did, who in their chat room doesn't like Ghost, right?
Oh, it was a good movie.
So what is it? Is it in the, I often think about this, is it in a space of an inner dimension that's not quite in um, physical form, but not completely in a um, spiritual form. And spirit's the
It,
wrong word.
it's
Uh,
another dimension.
yeah, it's another. Okay, all right.
It's another dimension where you don't need the density that we have here on this planet.
So good that you brought that up. Give you a big hug on that one. So density, folks, is really something that's very interesting because I'm going to be doing a program, Barb, on the fact that gravity in what we have perceived gravity to be is quite different than what it really is. And it has to do with the density of matter
Right.
as to what gravity is. And here's the interesting thing about gravity. There is a place where gravity is subservient. Are you ready to this? To the mind of energy. It's very interesting. The core of the earth, I'm becoming convinced, is a place where gravity does not exist. It can't exist.
That makes sense.
So when we talk about, in this case, crossing over, I'm beginning to understand, Barb. I'm beginning to see here now that if I can begin to comprehend matter, even once the transition is made, that knowledge is going to carry over.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And it was what I find fascinating is that our mind is capable of counterbalancing gravity.
Yes. Yes. People, I'm going to go into the chat room here in a minute. Barb, would you like to take a couple of questions from the audience and see what they got going?
Sure.
All right, so folks, I am over here. Any questions for Barb tonight? Let's see. One person is saying, I think a lot of people are interesting, Barb, as to what more experiences that you've talked to people on the other side.
Oh, they're such fun. They're
Is it
such
really?
fun.
Have you met anyone that's been sad or in
No.
torment?
Oh my gosh, no. I mean, the thing that I've heard most often, well, the thing that I've actually heard most often is that Elvis is actually there. Um, I remember one lady who, and Summerland is kind of like a mirror of here to a degree for a while, and you know, whatever you require happens. I mean, you know, you the cool thing is you don't gain weight and you don't lose weight and stuff like that. But there was one lady who was very religious, and her big deal was going to church, and you know, she was a little offended that not everybody went to church. And then she realized there were churches that she went to, and she got curious one day and she started visiting some of the other ones that were not her particular persuasion. And then she realized that she got very upset and very angry, and she said, that's not right, they're all giving the same message out.
Oh, someone wants to know, what do you think of purgatory?
Doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. Interesting.
Purgatory is a human concept. You got to understand, you're going from a human body in a physical reality to an etheric body in an etheric realm.
Okay. Okay.
So that there's, especially you're in an etheric body. An etheric body cannot feel because it's not physical. Therefore, there's no way you're going to have pitchforks and fire and devils and all of that. It doesn't exist.
So I keep on thinking about, I'm trying to read this at the same time.
Purgatory is a Catholic institution to scare you.
Okay. For control, right?
Yeah.
Someone was asking, and I guess this is a question I've had as well. What about people who've committed suicide?
They usually get sent right back.
Okay. So it's
In,
just,
in my experience, suicides are basically turned around and put back into a baby
okay.
that will have the same experiences to be able to embrace them and deal with them because they were here to experience whatever it was they had, and they chose to try to get the easy way out. And it's not the easy way out. You come back and you do it again.
Yeah, so Jen is saying that she had a friend that almost committed suicide and he saw purgatory. And I'll answer this one, and then Barb, you too. I think my think thought is this, is that you project what you see yourself into, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I kind of think as well, is that it's an expression, as a man thinketh, so he is. And I think that,
Well, it's you're you know that old adage that we can only describe things from our own frame of reference.
yes, yes,
You're trying to put um, you're trying to understand a reality that you have no concept of, at least you know now. You're thinking in human terms, you're thinking in humanoid terms, actually, so that you've been told that there will be pain, there will be suffering, your guts are going to be ripped out, you're going to be sad, all sorts of awful things. But it's just your spirit that goes on, and your spirit is etheric and has no form. It can't feel unless it's in a physical form. So,
it's always been a surprise. Exactly? So how does the spirit feel? Exactly. How are you going to feel this?
and you have to understand, it's almost as though it's just this whole lifetime is just a small part of the journey that spirit is on. It's a learning experience. It's not you know, it's our lifetime, this is it, but it's not it. This is
No.
an experience. And so whatever happens, and mass murderers the same way, they were here to experience something, they experienced it, they experienced death, they moved on. Nobody has always been good. And we're here to experience everything. Somebody told me once that you were whatever sex you were, that was the sex, and that was the personality you took lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. There's no way that's how it goes, because how would you learn if that was the case? And so you are male, you are female, you are hermaphrodite, you are a trisexual or whatever, but you've been everything, and you've murdered, you've been the prostitute and the priest, you've been all sides of the coin. And that's what this earth plane is for. This physical reality is to experience all manner, shape, and form of the existence, the physical existence.
All
I'm
right,
not here
Robert.
for intellectual stuff.
I'm good on that one. Robert
Yeah,
Crowley asked, does astral projection tie to this other ethereal world?
no.
Ethereal. Okay. All right.
I mean, the astral is a level of the emanation from our physical body. It's a level of us, but it's not our total spirit. Our total spirit moves on to that other realm. Astral projection, astral body can experience a lot of things, but on the earth plane.
Okay. Yeah, because that cord is still connected, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I see. That makes complete sense. Do people, once they cross over on the other side, is there a shock period, or do they just suddenly have corporeal? Do they have understanding or consciousness of what's happened?
There are some that have suffered terribly, they call it cocooned. They're wrapped in love, and they're given a time to sort of get it all together.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful. That is beautiful. Did y'all hear that? That's beautiful. Say that again, Barb. They're actually cocooned, right?
they're cocooned in love, and
Wow.
they're given time to pull themselves back together. Now I'm talking about people that have been tortured, that have
Yeah.
been brutalized, that and in those instances they're cocooned, and then they are woken slowly, um, because there's a gentleness to the whole process. If it's an accident that happens fast, there's a little bit of disorientation.
Yeah.
Um, I remember one guy who died in an accident, and his whole thing, the first little while was he wanted to haunt a number of people, and I just want to scare the bejesus out of them a little bit, not a lot, and it was, I mean,
Uh,
for a time, our personalities are there, but over time, we kind of take on the more etheric form and move on.
when you said that, it just seems so typical. I could see that. I mean, I really could. I mean, there are. I had a friend who passed away many years ago, but he was just a smartass. I mean, he was one of these guys that it was just who he was, and people loved him.
Hmm.
And it wouldn't be surprised that he'd get over there and he says, "Oh, come on, please."
Yeah, just a little.
Just a little bit, you
Well,
know.
they are able to manifest pennies to let
Okay.
people know that they're okay. Often feathers. They can electronically cause music to play on the radio every now and then. I mean, there are ways that they can kind of send signals back, hey, I'm okay.
So there is forms of communication then that they try to
Oh,
let us
yeah.
know. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Any particular story that comes to mind? Because I think it's so fascinating for me is that it seems like it's a very busy place. I at one time saw in a spirit, in a vision, that it's like this highway up there. I mean, it's just it's nonstop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's lots of room. It's not crowded.
That's what I heard.
I've never experienced, a log jam or I've never experienced crowdedness at all. They seem to There seems to be room for everybody to have plenty of space to do whatever they need to do, and then as they lose their density and become, I have a woman who's come to me for like 20 years wanting to know what her husband was doing, and I mean, for a long time I was able to tell her exactly what was going on and give her messages from him, and then he became it had been so long that he'd been over there that he was literally studying for new experiences, so that it was kind of like it was time for her to move on and it was time for him to move on as well. So, and she was very worried, will he be there when I pass? And I said, of course he'll be there when you pass. There's no, of course. But he was moving on, and they do that. They lose enough of their density so that they understand, so that as they lose the humanity part, the spiritual reality expands and they understand the journey that they're on.
Wow. So help me out here, Barb. One of the things that I think about is that we're very much aware of this time in history. And
Hmm.
I was born, like you, we were born right at the end of World War II.
Yeah.
We saw the evolution of America. That's what it's become. So, and I'm actually looking forward to the fact of passing over. It's to me, it's becoming more of, I can't wait till I get there, this type of thing. I
Hmm.
got work I have to do here, but inside these things are getting settled. So here's my question. How could I ever relate to someone that was 1,000 years ago in life? Or how could someone 1,000 years from now relate to me? Is it the fact that when we finally get to that place where we let go of that final, what I heard, it's like the thread of a silk of a spider. That
Hmm.
once you let go of it, you are free to begin to go out. Is that what happens? That it's not an issue then of time to the individual? I mean, I'm sure I'll get the answer when I get over there, but
Well, it's very much like, you hear people say, I channel Saint Michael and I channel Saint whoever,
yeah,
or I
yeah.
channel master this or master that. They aren't individuals, they're levels of consciousness. They're available for anybody to tap into.
It's like this huge data bank that's got the memories, right?
Yeah,
The energy. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's an energetic. So I mean, could you talk to Einstein? Sure. Could you talk to Aristotle? Could you talk to Plato? I mean, there are a couple of guys that I would like to talk to, kind of like, what was the real story of Atlantis? Where did you really get it? Were you drunk one night and this was something you guys sat around and created, or did it really exist? Um, and just to segue from that, one of the out of place artifacts that was found is a stone that goes back, I think, 15 to 20,000 years, that literally has the map of the world on it, and on that are two um, land masses that easily could be Atlantis and Mu.
Mm.
So
And I'm
uh,
convinced that there's an inner earth that we just have not been taught properly.
easily could be.
And and then I think about the past because see, I'm like you. I believe that our history, our ancestry goes back millions of years. I
Oh, I
just
agree. I agree.
and I wonder about the great minds that we don't even have any idea about. And you
Well,
know,
I think we get very arrogant in thinking that today we have the brightest minds ever,
yeah,
and yet when you look back, thousands of years to these stone circles and things like that that have been created, great minds had to determine how to build them in many cases,
yeah,
so that the capacity of the mind to challenge the issues of the day has always been the same.
yeah.
So you could probably take the geniuses that put that stuff together thousands of years ago and plunk them down and give them a crash course in computers, and I think they'd be off and running.
Isn't that interesting?
Because you talk about sacred geometry, and sacred geometry has been around forever.
Yes, yes, it has. I've been contemplating as well, Barb, when I realized that, that there are no alchemy schools today. But as
Mhm.
I begin to look at things, was talking to one of the subscribers that emailed me, and I didn't realize, like a chef is an alchemist.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, so Go ahead.
I was just going to say, but you should be at a place where you don't need the school. You've got it all inside.
That is what I am learning. We've got the understanding of the elements. It's just understanding how to master those elements. I like.
And
Go ahead.
but everybody will master them differently.
Yes.
So a recipe will do you no good.
Yep. That's exactly what I'm finding. And I remember the first conversation I had with you. You said, "Well, I'm doing pretty good on 2 of the 3." We were talking about water, you know?
Yes.
Yes. And what was it that you told me? Well, ice, I can walk on that pretty well.
Yeah, I'm great in a solid state, but not in the gaseous and liquid. And I can't do that yet.
Oh, well, my lady, another hour has gone by just like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't even get through half of my list. So you know what that means, don't you? We're
I'll
going to
have
have,
to
yes,
come
because
back.
you see what I do, folks, is that when I know that Barb's coming on, I try to get at least about 3 pages of things that, and we end up only going through about the first 1 or 1.5.
Well,
I
happily.
Well, I tell you, I am fascinated with this, the fact that if we begin to understand that we create all the all the time, that if we could learn to begin to discipline ourselves, Barb, I think we could begin to, I think mankind, humanity, could begin to change things within a very short period of time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, we know for sure there are Tibetan monks that can levitate.
Yeah,
And if one guy can do it, we all can do it.
yeah.
So it's just a matter of study.
Well, I invite everyone that's in the chat rooms, everyone that is watching this, come and join Barb and I again. And Barb, I think we can do this. If we could just begin to get the simplest of concepts down, I think we could aid everyone here to begin to have a future much more different than the one that the world is being presented today.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
All right.
Totally agree.
So I have your word. You're going to come back on, and then we'll start getting some of these steps down.
We'll hash it out.
Okay, there we go. So, folks, listen, thank you for joining us. I just want to say for Barbara DeLong, go over to her website. Barb, what's your website?
BarbaraDeLong.com.
Can y'all remember that? I know you can. Listen,
And my YouTube channel. That's Barbara DeLong too.
go there, sign up. Let's get her on the map. Let's get her subscribers off there. And remember this, you are special. That's what Barb is here to teach us. I'm here to encourage. There's only one of you. Keep yourself in a good state of mind, and together we're going to figure this thing out. So be kind to one another. Barb, big hugs to you, my dear. Thank you
To you
for
too.
joining us. We'll see y'all again real soon. Okay.